Welcome back to the Data Protection Diaries. Welcome back to the vlog. In today's video, we're going to be talking about supplier assurance reviews, due diligence questionnaires, third-party reviews, whatever you want to call them. We're looking at how you handle third parties that are processing, managing, delivering services on your behalf, and how can you ensure in the most effective way that they are looking after your information in the same way that you would and in the way that you would expect them to. If you aren't already subscribed to the channel, please do me a huge favor and click down the bottom right hand corner of the screen on the little logo and make sure that you are subscribed. We're very, very close to 1,000 subscribers and it would be amazing to hit it before the summer. If you are subscribed, please do make sure that you obviously like this video, comment down below, let me have your thoughts as well. All of these things just help the YouTube algorithm to know that this kind of content is interesting and people find it useful. And that's enough of the begging and pleading. Let's get on with what we want to talk about today. Supplier assurance is a huge key part of any kind of compliance framework, regardless of whether you're looking at things from a data protection perspective or you're looking at things from an information security or cybersecurity perspective. Understanding what third parties are doing for you, what they're doing with your information, and how they are protecting that information. So what controls, what processes, what technical structures have they got in place to maintain a secure perimeter around the information that you're going to provide to them is incredibly important. And it's one of the things that people struggle with the most. The reason that I've decided to do this video this week is actually over the last couple of weeks we've been supporting a small client of ours who are just starting up. They're just trying to break into their particular industry and they actually came stuck dealing with the procurement team from, believe it or not, Microsoft. So a huge multinational organization who you would think has their kind of due diligence on point. The challenge here was that when the due diligence was first done, so when that initial kind of questionnaire was first filled in, the client kind of took it upon themselves to say yes to absolutely everything. So yes to every single question, yes to every single option, thinking that that was what the customer wanted to hear. That was what Microsoft wanted to hear. What they'd inadvertently done is actually say that they were processing special category information, they were hosting information on their own servers, they were having international transfers, they were having customer information, and they'd actually said yes to all of these different things that they don't do. And what they do is very simple, it's very specific, and they don't use any Microsoft customer information to deliver the service. So they'd inadvertently kind of put themselves in a situation where they then had to do a huge amount of additional due diligence just to get themselves onto the contract. Now this is especially important when we're talking about supplier due diligence, because ensuring that your suppliers understand what you're asking them and understand the questions that you're asking them and the reasons why is pivotal to making sure that you get the responses that you need to ensure that you've got the right viewpoint on the risk that that potential supplier or that supplier is going to bring to your organization. A lot of the due diligence questionnaires that we see and that we deal with are long, they're complicated, they ask lots of questions in lots of different ways, and it can be very difficult for people to keep an eye on and very difficult for people, especially suppliers that don't have technical teams or don't have technical knowledge, small startups, small businesses in general, it can be very difficult for them to understand what it is that you're trying to get out of them. When you're creating your supplier due diligence questionnaire, the first thing that you need to look at and understand is what is the risk to your organization. So what kind of information are you going to be passing over to your suppliers, passing over to your processes? How confidential is that information? What is the potential impact of that information being lost, stolen, misused? What kind of harm could be done to your organization? If that information is incredibly sensitive, so if you're messing around with special category information, medical data, for instance, large amounts of financial data, then the impact is obviously going to be much more severe than if you're just using somebody to potentially outsource your HR recruitment to or your HR processing, and you've only got a small team. So what you need to understand is what's the impact on the business, what does the business face from a risk perspective, and then you can start to decide what kind of questions are going to be pertinent to ask of your suppliers. So how deep do you need to go? How much information do you need? And how much do you really want to know about their networks, their firewalls, their securities and their controls? The next thing that you want to do is look at what's actually important. So again, going back to the kind of information that you're going to be sharing with these third parties and sharing with these suppliers, what kind of information do you really need to know? Are they going to be housing your information? Are they just going to be processing it on your behalf? Are they keeping it on a proprietary system within their own network? If they are, then you may want to ask questions about firewalls, network controls, access controls. Who's going to have access to our information? How is that going to be managed? Can you monitor that if something goes wrong? Can you tell us where that went wrong or how that incident possibly occurred? That's not going to be the same if your supplier is, I don't know, a mailing house, for instance, and all you're doing is providing them with names and addresses, and they print labels, pop them on envelopes for you, and then they mail those things out. The set of questions is going to be very different. So you need to make sure that you're being aware of what's important and what kind of questions that you're asking each supplier. Now this does mean that you're potentially going to end up with different types of questionnaires for different suppliers, and that can be a little bit time consuming to do, but once you've got those templates in place, giving the right template to the right supplier can save you a lot of time and a lot of heartache further down the line. Another thing to consider when you're doing any kind of supplier due diligence or when you're creating these kind of questionnaires is have a read through those questions and read through them from the third party's perspective. If you have to, give the questionnaire to somebody to test out, give it to a friendly client, give it to a member of your family, somebody that doesn't necessarily understand things in a technical mindset, and see if they can understand what it is that you're asking. Is it easy for them to gather the information? Is it easy for them to understand what is being asked? There's nothing worse than a due diligence questionnaire that just gets filled in and gives you the answers that people think you want because it was too complicated for them to understand, or even worse than that, they just don't fill it in. You never get them to come back to you. You never really get a response. Very often it's too late, you've already onboarded them, the procurement process is done, or if you're a small business, the contract's already been signed, the product's already in place, the service is already being delivered, but you never quite got to the bottom of that due diligence just because it was too complicated for somebody to answer. So you've just defeated the whole object. Making sure that the questions are easy, clear to understand, and it's simple for people to give the responses that you're looking for is really important if you're going to be doing this properly. The next thing you're probably going to want to consider is how often do you do these supplier assurances? So how often are you going to send this questionnaire out? The first thing to do is obviously send it at the point that you onboard any kind of new service provider, any kind of new software provider, whatever it may be. If you've risk assessed it, you think it's pertinent, you think it's worth them having any kind of due diligence done, then do it before you sign the contract. Ask those questions, give them the opportunity to respond, and then you can decide whether A, they are the right company for you, or B, maybe they can make some small tweaks and they're actually going to make you a lot more comfortable. Next thing is to decide when you want to go back out and do that again, if at all. Now, some clients we speak to want to do these things on an annual basis, and I get the reasoning why and I can understand it, but from a supplier's perspective, that's incredibly time consuming. If you're getting questionnaires every single year from all of your clients, inadvertently, you're just going to end up never getting around to answering them all. The people asking the questions are going to get annoyed. You're not going to get the answers you need. You've then kind of created yourself a framework that is already set up to fail and isn't going to be offering you any additional benefits. If you have a supplier that is processing minimal information, that isn't particularly processing anything important, then why do you need to do it more than every 2 years, every 3 years? Work out what that pinch point is or what that point of change might be, and then reissue the questionnaire then. It may be that you decide that actually we're only going to reissue if there's a significant change in the way in which the organisation works, or a significant change in the service that's being provided, or even if you swap providers, and then of course you can do it for the new provider. That's not going to be the same if the provider is processing lots of special category or confidential information, because you're going to want to know on a more regular basis that their controls are still valid, that they're still looking after your information in a effective and efficient way. So you may want to issue the questionnaire on a more regular basis. Again, annually for me always seems a bit of overkill, but certainly every 2 years is not a bad place to be, but you do need to determine that by supplier rather than just having a blanket approach. Another good way of getting that kind of continual comfort that your suppliers are doing the things that they should be in terms of their security standpoint is to state that you want all of your suppliers to have something like Cyber Essentials as an absolute minimum. If they have a valid Cyber Essentials certificate, at least it means that they have been through that process every year. It's been assessed by an independent assessor, and the demonstration of that certificate could give you the comfort that you're looking for, that they have good basic level controls in place. If that's not enough and you want to know more about their technology stack and more about their network and their infrastructure controls, you could mandate that suppliers have to have CE+. So they have to have a vulnerability assessment carried out on the network. The things that they've said in that questionnaire have to be tested independently, and somebody has to go in and check them. And again, that's potentially going to give you comfort that these companies, that these organizations are doing things in a right way. Similarly, for bigger organizations, more capable organizations, shall we say, suggesting that they have ISO 27001 could tick that box for you again, because there is a continual improvement. They can demonstrate that they've got an ISMS, they can demonstrate that they've got a framework and management system, it's audited by a third party, and it may well answer all of the questions that you have on your due diligence questionnaire, so you may not even need to send them that questionnaire anymore. So there are options, and if you have a lot of suppliers or you have a lot of people working on your behalf, that can be a very effective way of starting to gain a better viewpoint on the level of compliance and on the security stance of all those people and all those different companies. As always, this is a fairly succinct view on the world. If you've ever been involved in any kind of due diligence, be it from the standpoint of an organization or from the standpoint of a supplier, you will have come across a questionnaire that just kind of made you scratch your head. You will have come across the challenges that we've discussed in this video. There are things that you can do to improve those processes. And as I say, from the very beginning, making sure that you are simplifying, make sure that you are picking out the salient points, addressing the risk that those suppliers potentially can have against your organization, are all very good ways of reducing the impact of carrying out due diligence, of making it easier to do, and of giving your organization the best possible benefits out of it. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. Yes, there are technology solutions out there, but they will mainly help you distribute the questionnaires. What's important is that you understand the impact, you understand the risk that these companies potentially face against you, and then you look to address those. And if you do that, you will find you have a much better due diligence process, and your company will be better for it. If you've got this far, thank you so much for listening. Please do make sure that you subscribe, like, comment down below, all of those wonderful things. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. Take care.